What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Sun Belt Syndicate, the 3B podcast, as we like to call ourselves, the Belt Baseball Beginners. I feel like I'm a real beginner after being gone on a little family vacation earlier this week. I've been scoreboard watching, to be totally honest with most of you. Luckily, our local statistician, Marv, will be on the case to provide us with a little bit more insight. And Seth is obviously going to bring his wisdom to the show as well. But he was in the same type of thing as me earlier with the family vacation early on. And who's got that? Is there some ad playing?
Yeah.
No free ads.
Sorry.
No free ads, man. Oh, man. Well, as always, we are brought to you by collegefootballdogs.com, part of Dog TV. And as always, again, Dubby, our presenting sponsor. You can go enter SB Syndicate at checkout for a little promo code and lets them know that we sent you over there, a little powder energy drink for those of you who need a little kick, which it sounds like Seth and I are definitely going to need here very shortly because of how our earlier parts of the week went. Marv, what about your week? How you been, man?
Man, just working baseball, buddy. That's all I do. So pretty routine.
Very nice. Very nice. We've got our resident Texas State fan, Artie, saying hello, everyone. Hope y'all had a good Easter. We do. Also hope you had a good Easter, Artie. And I think, fellas, I had a pretty good Easter. What about you guys?
Oh, yeah. I actually saw Marv on Easter.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, the family went up to Boone, and Seth invited me and my oldest son, Mason, out to practice with his Little League team this weekend. So we got to see each other and play a little ball.
Nice. Thanks for the invite, Seth. I didn't want to go.
Yeah, I know. Sorry.
Oh, man. No, I'm glad you guys got to see each other. I know the three of us getting together usually only happens during football season when we just plan on an entire day around it. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm ready to get back into watching more baseball now and keeping up better because, man, Tuesday was awful for the midweeks. And then Wednesday we had very few games, but we went 3-0 yesterday. So that's good. Before we get into the weekend action, at least we had some good games to rally around after a pretty terrible Tuesday, which we'll talk about here in a minute. And as we talk about that, we'll go ahead and tell you what our episode tonight is called. We entitled it, Where Are Teams Trending, right? We had some hot teams after this weekend, or we felt like we may have had some pretty hot teams. We had a lot of losses on Tuesday across the board, but we had some wins on Wednesday. Kind of where does that put everybody currently as we talk about where teams stand? So let's look at where the standings take us. Marv, you want to talk about the Cajuns real quick to start us off with 8-1?
Yeah, we were kind of talking before the show. I mean, 12-game win streak right now. The best team in the conference until somebody takes a series from them. 3 of their losses came in that Astros tournament they played in. So I mean, they lost to Vanderbilt, 1 run to LSU, and then to Houston. No one's going to get mad at you for losing to those teams. They're all quality teams, but 12 in a row. Crazy that they were 9-8 before they went on the streak. And right now, if I had to rank them, I don't think the standings are indicative of where everyone's going to end up at the end of the season, but the Cajuns are the team to beat until somebody beats them.
Yeah. And we'll talk about this more, but we may have a pretender sitting right there at number 2, right? I mean, is that maybe
we were talking about that this morning. I think, I mean, they played some good baseball. They took 2 or 3 from talking about Georgia State. They took 2 or 3 from James Madison this past weekend, correct? I mean, we'll see. I mean,
Big Georgia series coming up this weekend between them and Georgia Southern. And as we always pick with Seth, Georgia Southern, when you jumping ahead, they beat up on South Carolina last night. They've looked really good sometimes and really bad. So we always ask, who is this team? I think we'll find out who both of these teams are this weekend.
Georgia Southern's sitting dead at 5-4 right now. Troy 4-5. I mean, there's this middle of the pack right here. Like Marv was saying, I think Louisiana has kind of separated themselves. Southern Miss, they are who we think they are. We still don't know about Coastal. We're still trying to figure out Coastal right now, and Georgia Southern, that's a big question mark. Troy dropped a few this past weekend, but I think that top half right now, minus Louisiana, is up for grabs.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I agree with you guys too, as well. And what's crazy to me though is like we're sitting there looking at a team like App, who's 5-4 in conference. But look at that overall record, one of the best overall records in the conference at 18-8.
Right.
You definitely can make the argument they haven't played some of the toughest competition. They did play Duke, and they are going to play Wake Forest. So they do have some tough teams, but maybe the total number of good quality teams maybe isn't as high resume building wise as others. I think they're quite a bit lower in the RPI. I think even James Madison, Georgia State, is that what we've seen?
James Madison
both higher than them.
34 or 36. I want to say App's coming in right around 70 right now.
Yeah. We're trying to figure James. I remember we were talking about that. The James Madison RPI is a little questionable.
Very high. Yeah, very high.
I mean, the one win against Arkansas, we get that, but what else? They had one win against Coastal as well, right? But what else? I'm just not seeing the RPI. The reason why
I don't think James Madison has won a conference series yet. Now,
Nope.
So, and once again, I think if App gets 2 or 3 of them out of them this weekend, the games are at James Madison. Then I think you got to start. I think you kind of figured them out. But I don't know. At the beginning of the year, I was kind of hot on them. I was like, man, this looks like they could be a really good team. I'm a little surprised with their results so far in conference. And knock on wood, I hope their streak of not winning a series continues this weekend.
Yeah.
Very
true. So, again, mentioning that I was on vacation, didn't do all of the graphics needed, but what we're going to do is just put up the team we're going to be speaking about first, and we'll pretty much go in alphabetical order as far as that goes. So if you see the graphic, and that's just going to tell you who we're speaking about. If you're watching, if you're listening, well, just remember who we start talking about. But first up is App State. We just started kind of talking to it and alluding to it, but they beat Marshall 2-1 this past weekend.
Yep.
Seth, were you at any of those? I know Marv was, but I can't remember if Seth made it to any games.
I did not. Marv,
okay.
I know we had a letdown on Thursday, but then Marv, I believe the Saturday game you went to wasn't even close, correct?
No, it wasn't. We 10-run ruled them in 7. So kind of some of the highlights in the opening game, Marshall wins 9-8. App left the bases loaded in the 7th and the 8th. They got a run across in each one of those innings. I think 2 in the 8th, but we left. We left the game on the line in the 7th and the 8th. Just kind of got off to a slow start. Tried to play catch up. Good baseball game. Though 23 total hits, lots of action. Second game was a back and forth kind of deal. Kind of late in the game, it got really interesting. Marshall scored 6 in the top of the 7th. And App comes back and scores 6 in the bottom of the 8th, and then closes them out. And then the bat stayed hot for App. They carried that momentum from the 8th inning over. It was 15-0 after 2 innings in the last game. It was we jumped on them. Our starting pitcher, he had a perfect game going after 3. I think he walked a batter in the 4th, didn't give up his first hit until the 5th. Ends up pitching 6 innings. Gave up 3 hits, 2 runs, struck out 7, and that game was over in the 2nd inning.
Yeah. Did you get on the field afterward? Did you do a little Easter egg hunt?
No, we didn't do the Easter egg hunt. So it was a warm day in Boone, which was very nice. Both of my kids got foul balls during the game, and as soon as the game ended, it was pretty much a common theme of the family that was there that they were ready to go. So we jumped in the car.
Marv, were you able to? Did you have to shuttle, or were you able to get a parking space?
No, we got there early. We tailgated, man. We went to Jimmy John's and got subs, bought a 6-pack of beer, and sat in the parking lot and ate some sandwiches and had a couple beers and went to the game.
There you go.
Nice. Yeah, so that's why your kids got foul ball. They got liquored up and they beat some kids up, took the foul balls.
Do you know the Dickens boys? Obviously,
it was Logan, especially. It was actually cool. So we were on the first base side, which is where the Marshall dugout was. And in the first couple of innings, there were some foul balls hit over there, and a Marshall player would come out of the dugout, and my kids were there, and super nice. Said, "Hey, can we have that ball, please?" And they tossed it right over to him. So Pretty cool for them to be nice and throw balls over to App fans when they're getting their face kicked in.
Hey, Dominic, after spending a few minutes talking baseball with the Dickens boys, it's clear that we're the wrong ones on this podcast.
It just should be a Dickens family podcast at this point.
I sat and talked Major League Baseball with Mark's 5-year-old for 20 minutes about who the Padres got for Juan Soto. The kid, I mean, these kids, the knowledge of these boys is, I mean, we're clearly the wrong ones on this podcast.
So Marv makes them sit down and do 2 hours of homework and 2 hours of baseball study. That's why.
Listen, so we only give our kids 30 minutes of TV time a day, and they've got to earn it by being good at school and being good at home. They come home and they watch. The MLB Network has like a Baseball Tonight. I think they call it Intentional Talk or Quick Pitch, and that's their 30 minutes of TV. So they are as current as they can be at a young age of like what's going on in Major League Baseball. And on the weekends, we let them get a little bit more TV time. That's all they watch is Major League Baseball and college. I make them watch college, but they know way more than they should about Major League Baseball.
Nice. Yeah. Not a bad thing.
I mean, at least they're there's a lot worse things kids can be into.
I like the fact you don't shove a tablet in their face and be like, hey, leave me alone. I got home from work. Go do something.
Not that I'm opposed to doing that occasionally, but no.
Well, it's better when it's a seldomly used tool, because then they really attach to it and it actually works when you need them to be entertained without bothering you.
It is a reward, not a privilege, not a right.
Yep. Nice. I like how you stated that. I like that a lot.
But hey, kind of going on the theme, contender, pretender. Right now, what do you boys think about how App's playing? And obviously, we know what they got coming up. They got James Madison on the road, and they got Troy at home. That's the next two series. I think you'll have a much more clear picture after the next couple of weekends. But what are your guys' thoughts right now?
I mean, that's been the theme the last few weeks. Is let's wait for a few weeks to see what we can, see what we think. But I think it's finally time to say, looking at these standings, I think App's a pretender, or excuse me, a contender. I really believe that. 2 big wins against Coastal, which, like I said, I'm not solely convinced on Coastal just yet, but like Dom was saying, 18 overall and 5-4 in conference. Like the saying every week, we'll find out a lot about them this weekend. A little bit of a disappointing one loss to Marshall there, but like we talked about last week, baseball is a grind, and one loss here and there is not going to kill you. But I think we were talking this morning about, including midweeks, our goal at the end is going to be 35 to 40 wins, somewhere in that area. So now's kind of where the rubber meets the road, and you're going to have to win about every series from here on out to have a shot at the end. But I don't see why App's not a contender. I just don't see a reason yet, at least.
I'll agree with Seth, especially when you loop in, as he said, your goal is 35, or how many, what was your saying on the wins? 30 to 35 or
35 to 40, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if the goal is a regional, and I think that's a goal for App that it could be attainable. Yeah, I think you got to be plus 35 wins. The closer to 40, the better. Probably top 4 in the conference for regular season, and maybe make it to the conference championship game. I think if they get 35 to 40 wins, top 4 in the conference, make it to the conference tournament final, I think that they should earn a regional berth. They obviously won't host, but you never know.
It's kind of what the Cajuns did last year. Now, the difference is the Cajuns had a midweek victory over number 1 LSU on their belt, which, unless App State beats Wake, which is no longer, they are no longer who we thought they were at the beginning of the season. Here's the thing, too. You look at the rest of the schedule. They've already gotten through Texas State. They didn't win that one, but they got through that one. They don't have Louisiana on there, and they don't have Southern Miss. So you've got a series with Troy, Arkansas State, Georgia State, South Alabama, ODU, and Georgia Southern. I'm not saying they're going to be easy, but you're
bottom half teams. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, Georgia State right now is sitting second in the conference.
That's true. Yeah.
I don't personally think they're the second best team in the conference, but they're better than what I thought they were going to be. And then once again, Southern, Troy, ODU, they're all solid teams. I mean, you would like to think if they want to get to the regional, they need to take 2 out of 3 from each and every last one of those.
I agree.
And then maybe get a sweep in there against like an Arkansas State.
Artie is right. That is a cakewalk. No Louisiana, no Southern Miss. Already took 2 or 3 from Coastal. Getting Georgia State. I mean, it don't really matter where that series is. Let's be honest. I mean, they could play that at Watauga High School, and there's going to be as many people there in Atlanta. But looking at the schedule, I mean, yeah, it's very favorable. No Louisiana, no Southern Miss. You know, I think as long as they take 2 or 3, I mean, and somehow a close game against Wake or even a win, you know.
Yeah.
I wish that'll go a long way.
Is that game in Boone?
No, it is in Shelby.
It was in Boone last. No, it's the one in Boone last year. The third baseman for Wake hit a ball that's still not landed yet.
I remember that.
But no, the one it's not even at Wake, is it? It's at a neutral site, I believe.
It's at a high school in Shelby. I don't know why, but that's where it's at.
No, Shelby's got a nice baseball complex down there. I think they play the American Legion World Series down there. They have a complex.
So that it must be. So it's not like on a high school, but a high school plays home games there or something, because that's I was describing. But that makes more sense. It's probably a really nice field.
Yeah,
it's a nice stadium. The midweek games for App 2 outside of Wake are pretty favorable. UNC Asheville, Western Carolina, East Tennessee, which East Tennessee is a good ball team. I don't think we have midweek games the last 2 weeks of the season.
You're right. I don't think we do.
High Point, was it High Point they played on Tuesday?
High Point was coming in on a 7-game win streak, and I mean the bat stayed hot. I mean we jumped on them early. While we're talking about App real quick, consecutive weeks, App State has an offensive player of the week. Banks Tolley continues to just absolutely rake the ball. 6 for 13 in the series, 3 home runs, scored 5 times, 6 RBIs. He's hitting 6 straight games. Second in the conference in home runs with 11, third in slugging, third in OPS, 6 in RBIs, and 8 in runs scored. Not trying to be an App homer, which I am, and we'll say CJ's not hitting the ball that great right now, but he's a great hitter. He'll get out of that slump. But when you have CJ, Austin, and Banks 1, 2, 3, and Austin's hitting the ball really well right now, and so is Banks. When those 3 guys get, all of them are on the same page, and then you got Zamora in the 9 spot hitting the way he's hitting. That's a tough lineup to turn over. I mean, I think as long as our pitching can stay pretty consistent and the bats don't get cold, we're going to have a chance in every series that we play.
Yeah. While you're talking on that, Marv, have we talked about transfer portal yet on this show?
No, but we should talk about NIL here in a little while.
Transfer portal, the whole giveth and taketh away. I mean, those 2 alone with Austin and Tolley. I mean, you talk about losing transfer portal. Look at those 2 pickups. Those 2 alone. It can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing for App in that situation. Austin, when Austin was on the show earlier in the year, he talked about how many transfers in they had, and it's showing right now with that ball team.
Yeah, I'm super impressed. Kermit's doing a great job. I mean, if you look at the turnaround, he did not inherit the best program.
Don't talk about Billy Jones like that. Come on now.
Listen, I'm not going to lie. I mean, obviously, when Pollard left to go to Duke, we had a great squad. And
Billy Jones is an idiot. All right, go ahead and say what you want to say.
Billy Jones train wrecked the program, and Kermit's done a heck of a job digging us out. I mean, every year we're making progress. I feel like we kind of got through the crap last year, and last year was kind of the turning point. And hopefully we can. A regional's best case scenario for us this year, but damn it, I think we can do it. And I think we discussed App makes a regional. Us 3 will be there, loud and proud.
For sure.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Artie is disagreeing with us a little bit. He thinks Georgia State could be quality. We'll see. Neil was agreeing with you, Marv. He's obviously knowledgeable on the situation like you. It is a high school field, but they play American Legion Series there every year, and it is a nice field. So with that said, I think that ends the App State talk, at least for now. Arkansas State is up next, and we've got Ben James joining us again. He's saying that A-State loss to Arkansas was costly, but they are number 1, and it shouldn't be that bad not to score a run, but they didn't. They didn't score any runs, and that's one that Arkansas State fans always want. It doesn't matter what the sport is; they always want to go up against Arkansas. They want the bragging rights, just like the previous team we just talked about with App State. Whenever they go up against NC State or UNC, our programs, our size programs and schools want those types of games because we feel like we want some bragging rights. So obviously, it's not fun to drop those, but it is expected, right? I mean, Arkansas being number one. I guess the only thing you could say is current Sun Belt member James Madison did take one from them, so it doesn't seem impossible. But you knew they were bringing the heat when they were playing an in-state team as well. So yeah, he says. Plus, it didn't help the Hogs got the wind is carrying the ball. It's so hard to do anything when that happens. Yeah, I'd say wind is a big part of baseball, as Marv and his kids probably know, and Seth doing his stuff with coaching teams as well. Wind can really wreak havoc on you when it's not in your favor for a game. But I didn't get to watch any of that one, so I can't really speak to specifics. But yeah, a rough going there on that one.
Yeah, if we're going off the whole pretender contender thing, I think we were a little, we were pretty sure what Arkansas State was at the beginning of the season. Before we even started the season, and then we started questioning ourselves a little bit.
Yeah.
And then we were like, surely this will start coming back down. And then we started questioning ourselves again.
Yep.
And now I think we finally have our answer of what Arkansas State will be. Not terrible. I mean, 3-6 record, 16-15 overall, but half of those wins at the beginning of the season were for, I think, the Arkansas School of the Deaf, I think is who they played. So,
yeah, I got a little hot on them there at the beginning. I mean, I think they started off with 8-0.
Yeah,
but last week they lost 2 or 3 to Georgia Southern. Just kind of a quick recap of that series. First game was 6-2 Southern. Southern starting pitcher Ben Johnson threw a gem, 6 innings, 7 hits, 2 runs, struck out 5. The entire Georgia Southern pitching staff did not walk a player that game, so there was no free bases. Second game was a 10-run rule in 7. Georgia Southern got 15 hits. Arkansas State only got 2. Last game, Arkansas State wins 6-3. They scored 4 in the 8th. Georgia Southern tried to get it back in the 9th. They only got 2. 7 errors in that game, so kind of ugly defensively on both sides. But from what I saw, both pitchers pitched really well. Kind of a trend I'm noticing is if a team wins the first 2, like the last one's a really hard one to get. I don't know if they just kind of moral victory, hey, we won the series, but you haven't seen a ton of sweeps. You've seen a ton of 2-1s, and a lot of those 2-1s are we haven't seen a lot of rubber games so far. It kind of seems like it's 2-0, and then you lose one. You're seeing more than that, the rubber games. But I'm going to agree with you, Seth. I think Arkansas State they're not going to finish top 4. And that's kind of, to me, just looking at, historically getting teams into regionals, it's top 4. And I don't see it. Not saying they can't get super hot. We saw them start super hot, but I just don't see it. And they got Troy this they got Troy this weekend.
Going off what you said, Marv, about not sweeping. I mean, I've hammered, like, baseball's such a long season. Even and I believe I even called this Monroe taking at least 1 from Coastal.
Yeah.
Is that really a big surprise? Like you said, do what now?
It's hard to sweep. You got to play.
It's hard to sweep. Yeah. I mean, even your top team, Louisiana, if you told me Marshall took 1 from them, I wouldn't be surprised. Now 2, that's a little bit of a head turner, but I think Dominic hit the nail on the head last week with 4 teams. If we want 4 or 5 teams in this thing, we're gonna have to start seeing some sweeps. Somebody, these top 3 or 4 teams are gonna have to separate themselves. And if it is Georgia State, they're gonna have to, keep that momentum running through the conference. But I think the title of the show, is perfect for where we're at in this conference, because I think Georgia State will fall out, and I'm going to make a prediction that Coastal falls out too here eventually as well.
Yeah, that would be a big one. That would be a big one.
Like, I hammered this a couple of weeks ago. Like, and I know we'll get to it in a minute, but are we really impressed by Coastal right now?
Nope.
I was impressed with them early. Does it surprise me that took 2 out of 3? No.
Right.
They lost to UNCW in a midweek. That surprises me.
Yeah.
ULM taking one from them. No, that doesn't surprise me. They got ODU coming to the house this weekend.
Right.
If they lose one of those, that wouldn't surprise me. They lost 2, then I'm really going to start to question Coastal. But I'm still going to stick with them. I thought they were the best team in the conference, but I think Louisiana is right now. But I still see Coastal finishing top 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
But here's my question: if they finish 4th, is that still considered a letdown from where we were at the beginning of the season?
Hold that thought, because we'll get to them. I think they're coming up after these guys. So I did want to say, I misunderstood Artie's comment earlier. He was asking if the field quality in Shelby is Georgia State facility quality. So I'm going to say it's greater than Georgia State field quality, at least for this season. And then Artie was asking Ben if Arkansas State has always had the red and black colors, or was that after the rename? Trivia question, fellas. What was Arkansas State's mascot before the Red Wolves? You guys know why they went through a name change?
No.
Political correctness at its finest. They were the
Somebody
Indians.
didn't like their statue.
They were the Indians. So of course you cannot name yourself that.
Give me a break.
And but they were red and black. James was saying that, or Ben was saying that he believes they were always red and black. And then Artie said that Texas State changed color hues because ULM colors were nearly identical. So yeah, a lot of teams in our conference actually had some changing of history over time because of not wanting to appear to be the same, right? Like Arkansas State and App State, just right here back to back. A State, ASU, it's teams have tried to go. App State leans heavily on the App State moniker now because ASU's taken so widely across a couple spots. I know that when I used to tell people I live near ASU, they always thought Arizona State.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. Anyway.
And to answer Artie Cat's question, I just pulled up some pictures of that American Legion World Series stadium where they're going to play in Shelby. That's a quality ballpark. That's a really nice. It's looks like a AA stadium. It's nice.
Nice, very nice. And Chris Bolton's joining us saying a lot of schools with a Native American mascot changed to a wolf mascot. It does make sense that they would kind of keep it. I mean, it makes sense, I guess. I don't know exactly why, but it just kind of seems to make sense that it kind of does that.
To close my last thought on Arkansas State, I feel bad calling them a pretender. I think they're exactly where everyone thought they should be.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And I'll say that let's see, am I looking at the right one? Yeah, Arkansas State's remaining schedule. App State travels out there to Jonesboro.
They do.
Okay. They've got Texas State, JMU. Again, we don't know exactly where they're at, but not going to be easy as they travel to Harrisonburg for that one. Then they've got they host Southern Miss, and then they finish up at ULM on the road. Yeah, I just don't think it's going to be easy enough for them to kind of start swinging. Okay, so you said 8 wins to start the season, which was correct. They haven't strung more than 2 wins together since then.
Yeah.
So that tells you exactly where they're just on this like little itty bitty roller coaster. As I can make a metaphor for what I experienced all week, being down there at Legoland, Florida. No free ads, but Legoland, Florida is where I was at. So we will jump next into Coastal Carolina. We do have some. We'll get back into the CJ is asking about the JMU App State series. We'll get back into that when we get to JMU again here in a little bit. And then Tim Platt, our resident Georgia Southern fan, is asking us the original mascot or team name for Georgia Southern. It makes sense when you know what they're originally known for. What you guys remember what App State was originally known for when they first became a school, right?
App State was a teacher's college.
So was Georgia Southern. So what do you think their mascot was? Very simple here. Don't overthink this.
A professor.
You're close. The teachers.
Wow. Wow.
Yes. But hey, I mean, that's kind of the cool thing. That's a little history in the rivalry of App State, Georgia Southern about why it seems to be elevated is because they're both historically teachers, colleges. There's a lot of similarities between the two in that regard. Oh, sorry. So Coastal Carolina, as you've said, Seth, ULM takes the first game down there against them, but they do come back and ultimately win the series. And man, I just got to touch on this. So those standings that I showed earlier, those are all corrected and updated. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
When I first shared that graphic, it was wrong because I was trying to do it quickly again before going on vacation, getting all these things out. I just trusted the Sunbelt website, right? I mean, that's where I was grabbing stuff from. I didn't really do all the math in my head real quick. And they actually gave Coastal credit for sweeping that series versus ULM. And so I actually had ULM with one less win and Coastal with one extra win when I first released that graphic. And what's funny is that the only people that pointed it out was Warhawk fans mad about the fact that I didn't give them credit for one of their wins. There wasn't any Coastal fans giving me any crap about having them less wins. So that tells you where Coastal's sitting right now. If
so
their
Coastal's
fans
5-4, right? And Monroe's
Yep.
3-6. Is that where we're at?
Okay. Yeah, Monroe's third from the bottom in the conference. Coastal is, depending on where you look, some people have App fourth and Coastal fifth and flip-flopped. I'm going to say App's fourth just because we took a series from them, but technically they have more wins than us.
Right.
Yeah, I still haven't looked. I meant to look up the tie-breaking rules on that, but I still haven't.
Is Coastal still ranked this week?
I'd be shocked.
They are. They only, in fact,
is Louisiana ranked this week? Because if they're not,
they are not. And I actually went on Twitter and defended that because I agree with you. I think they should be ranked. You're talking about one of the hottest teams in college baseball. I don't think they're giving credit for how good the conference is, sadly. And I don't understand that because if you go and compare conferences, I think at this current time, I still believe that they're the fourth best conference statistically in the country, right? And we've been shouting this from the time we started this show that Sunbelt is not a mid-major baseball conference. They're just not. They care more about it. They bring more people. They have better traditions and histories than a bunch of these schools, especially I'm specifically speaking of the Big Ten when we're talking about baseball, a conference that doesn't even have every school field a team.
Yeah. So
you want to tell me about, Big Ten being a better baseball conference? You can miss me with that. Anyway, Coastal is still ranked. They only dropped one spot in D1 baseball poll. Can you believe it? From 19 to 20.
Why?
I don't know. I don't know how they're even ranked. To me, I would have taken them out and put Louisiana in.
I believe it's called recency bias.
Absolutely.
Still ranked.
Yeah. And I do think they're weighing Coastal's start of the season more heavily. I mean, they did have some really impressive wins, but then when you think about some of those,
Wake Forest, but
Wake Forest, Campbell, Wake,
Campbell, you keep sneaking up on me. Campbell, yeah, I'll give you Campbell.
Yeah,
Campbell has fallen out of the rankings as well, so it's not like it's still, sitting up there.
Fast forward to UNCW, 2 to App, 1 to Monroe. My ultimate opinion would be contender, but it's borderline just because of where we started. You know what I'm saying? Like we were building these guys up even through week 3, and now we're starting to kind of separate ourselves, and I'm just not impressed yet, fellas. I'm sorry, but no.
I still think they're, like I said, I think they're top 4. I think at the end of the year,
top 4 is fine.
Yeah, I think they end up third in the conference. I'm actually about to ask Dom, who do they have left? So I know this weekend they have ODU. Listen, ODU's mid in the conference. I think ODU's a hard out. I think they can pitch. I think their bats aren't as hot as they would like them to be. But who do they have after ODU?
Get ready for this because it ain't easy. They got at Georgia Southern. They host Louisiana. At Southern Miss. They host Troy before Southern Miss, but they have Troy at home, then at Southern Miss, Georgia State, and then they end the season at Marshall, which might be their easiest out of all of them. But then you're on the road to Marshall with the good, so far what looks like a pretty solid pitching staff there,
So their next 5 series are, God, I mean, it's if I'm a Coastal fan, I almost feel like our back's against the wall and we're, every weekend matters, which is it should in conference, but
right.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, that's going to be rough.
That is
going to
tough.
be rough. Georgia Southern on the road, Southern Miss on the road, and then Louisiana comes to town as well as Troy. It doesn't get much harder than that.
I'll recap their series with ULM real quick. First game, they lost 11-3. ULM jumped all over them, 8-0 to start the game. 27 total hits. Kid Sean Weatherby for ULM went 4 for 5 with 5 RBIs. Have yourself a day, kid. Second game, 4-1 Coastal. Coastal puts up 3 in the first and just kind of coast, to be completely honest. There wasn't a lot of action after that. Last game, 9-0 Coastal. It looks bad, but Coastal scored 7 of those runs in the 7th and 8th inning. Pretty tight ball game up until then. They did hit 3 home runs, and their pitching staff struck out 12. But final score shows a blowout, but through 7, it wasn't a blowout.
Nice. Yeah, makes a lot more sense when you talk about it like that. Already saying Coastal fried chicken. doesn't ring off the tongue like Kentucky fried chicken, but you know.
Well, I will say this, Seth. After hearing what Dominic just said of who they have left, if they finish top 4 in the conference, that's nothing to shake a stick at. They definitely got a tough draw.
I'll give you that all day. I'll give you that. I'm just talking about the recent losses to teams that we didn't expect to be in the top. You know, App will give you, I would expect you to take at least 2 or 3 from App. You lost that series. Don't necessarily expect you to sweep Monroe, but it still looks bad. And then losing the midweek this week, it's just not trending upwards, I guess, is where I'm getting at on all this.
Yeah.
If they lose 2-3 to ODU this weekend, then I think it's full panic mode time for the.
What if they do not sweep? Is it?
I think if you were to ask me right now if that was one of our series, I would say 2-1 Coastal. Just because I'm seeing how hard it is to sweep.
Fair.
Right. Yep, that makes sense. Going back real quick, Ben has a good question. This one's kind of obvious, I think, but maybe you guys aren't thinking about it. Trivia question: who's A-State's biggest rival outside the Sun Belt besides Arkansas and Little Rock?
Memphis.
Yep, nailed it. Already guessed Central Arkansas, which is also a good one, but I think you don't want to be playing down. I think that's how a lot of people would think, but yeah, Memphis it is. They do play them twice. They already lost, I think it was 13-7, but they do have them again in late May or early May, I think, actually, one more time for this season. Texas State was also originally called Normal College, which was a teaching school. Cool pictures from the 1915 team wearing normal jerseys. I guess that was just normal on the jerseys. I'm sure that's pretty funny to think about. But yeah, we'll have to see what goes on there. Our next team, I hope Tim's still watching with us, is Georgia Southern, who just
we kind of talked about. Yeah, we talked about the series when we talked about Arkansas State.
Yeah, 2-1 in that one. So let's well, first of all, does anyone want to start off with saying contenders or pretenders at this point yet?
I still don't know.
I don't either.
They still baffle me.
This might be the one team that we do not know anything about.
They've strung 4 wins together twice, and they've kind of gone, 2 wins, 2 losses, 1 win, that kind of thing ever since early parts of the season where they strung those 4 wins together at a time. Let's see what they've got left.
I'll say this. They win the series against Georgia State, I'll call them a contender. They lose that series, they're going to be behind the 8 ball. Go ahead and tell us who they have after Georgia State.
Yeah, they got at Georgia Tech right after Georgia State, so that's not going to be an easy one there. I think they already played them once and got beaten there. What?
I think it was 10-0. They lost to Georgia Tech. I could be incorrect.
That was Georgia Bulldogs. Okay. So I don't think they played Georgia Tech. Maybe that was somebody else. That was Georgia State.
Was Georgia State.
Yeah. Okay.
Marv, if Georgia State.
Sure
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm sure they love us getting confused between Georgia State and Georgia Southern. That never happens.
Those fan bases absolutely love it that's great.
If Georgia State takes 2 or 3 from Georgia Southern, does Georgia State become a contender?
I mean, when we get to them here in a second, I'm going to call them a contender. I mean, they're second place in the conference right now. I'm not convinced how solid that is, but yeah, they win that series. I mean, they've got a big leg up on some folks.
Okay.
No,
just curious.
So Georgia Southern, after Georgia State and Georgia Tech, they host Coastal Carolina. They go to James Madison. They host Marshall on the road at ULM. They host Louisiana before ending the season in Boone versus App State.
Yeah, that's a couple winnable series there, and everything else is going to be a dogfight.
Yep, I agree with you. And I would say because of that, I mean, I'm also kind of on the fence with you. I'm like 50-50. I mean, if they can play like they did against South Carolina, then watch out. But if they play like they did against College of Charleston, then not so great. Midweeks are hard to judge. That's why, you throw those out because kind of back-to-back nights, one was not a good performance, one was fantastic. But
I mean, looking at Georgia Southern's record, it really is. Who are they? 5-4 in conference and 15-14 overall. It's like that could not be any more dead even.
Yeah. And so. I think we're about to see more of that. I mean, like you said, it's hard to sweep. It also seems to be hard to get swept in the opposite realm of that. But they've got to do some sweeping here on some of these lesser teams if they want to continue, because some of these good teams that they play, like Louisiana and Coastal Carolina and App State right now, especially because they've got only one of those, or no, they do have two of those at home, I guess. Louisiana and Coastal both at home, App State on the road. So we'll have to see how that. I love the fact that they're ending with App State, Georgia Southern, whether it was intentional or not. Great way to end the season for both teams before conference tournament play starts. So, all right. So we alluded to the fact that they're going to play Georgia State Panthers this week. Obviously, next in line are the Georgia State Panthers, who, which ones they took 2-1 from James Madison. We haven't talked about that one specifically. So, Marv, why don't you give us a little bit of detail on that series from this past weekend?
Yeah, let me find. So, I did. Full disclosure, I watched 0 of these games, but just kind of looking at the stats. So they dropped the first one to James Madison 14-6. JMU was up 10-1 in the fourth inning. Georgia State committed 4 errors. Just looks like it got away from them pretty quickly. Win the second game 7-2, and the last game 8-7. I don't really have any notes for the second game. It just kind of looks like they just won. Last game was a really even game. It wasn't a walk-off or anything like that, but once again, who is JMU? But anytime, I think, was that in Atlanta or was that in Harrisonburg?
It was in Atlanta. I remember watching it on TV, and it felt like we were like in The Sandlot or something, watching that movie. I mean, it was terrible.
I mean, listen, you take 2 out of 3 against a conference opponent. That's a good weekend. The record right now in conference kind of speaks for itself. I'm going to say they're a contender until someone knocks them off. That's they kind of earned that right now. Now that I look at it, gosh, 7-2 in conference, but they're 15-13 overall.
Pretender.
Yeah, like I said, until someone knocks them off. But I do not have them in my. Like I said, I keep going back to the top 4 because I think the top 4 make a regional. I do not have them in my top 4. I have them at 6.
Yeah. I don't have this team ending in the top 4 this year at all. So they've got Georgia Southern at Georgia Southern, as we talked about. I don't think they play well there. We'll see, especially with how Georgia Southern's coming hot right now after beating South Carolina. Then they do host, but they have Southern Miss coming to town next weekend. They go on the road to Troy. They come to App State. They host App State.
Yeah.
Then they travel on the road 2 series in a row at Marshall and then at Coastal, ending the season at home again against ODU. I don't see them being favorable overall in those matchups. And if they're not more favorable, I'd lean toward the side of a lot more losses coming to them.
Yeah.
And with that, at best you're ending up around 500, but I'd see them probably falling below 500 for the year. It's kind of, to me, they're a pretender at this point.
Yeah, I might move them down to 7th.
What do we have? 21 conference games left. Is that what we figured out this morning?
Yeah, everyone's got 7 series left.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and if you look back at their start of their season was not good. At one point, they had lost 6 in a row. No, was it 5? 5 in a row. Then they played some kind of weaker teams. You got Western Carolina and Army in there. Not real great. Then they've kind of just been kind of back and forth since then. So for the last 8-9 games, it's just kind of win, loss, win, loss, win, loss type of thing. I just don't see it. I don't see it improving. And I think for them to stay at the top, they're going to have to keep sweeping teams. And I just don't think that's on the horizon for this team right now.
So Marv, being completely honest, if you've got 4, okay, so Georgia State would fall out, so you would have one open spot after your 4. Is that what you're saying with it being Louisiana, Southern Miss, and Coastal?
Yeah, so I mean, my top 4, what I think predicting is going to happen, top 3 will be Louisiana, Southern Miss, and Coastal. And then I really have the 4th team down to the winner of the App State Troy series. Just my opinion.
Really? Okay.
Nice.
Fair enough.
I think Artie was saying this about Georgia Southern, but throwing it on this part instead. We'll see. They're streaking wins as far as Georgia Southern is concerned. I'm going to come back to Ben's comment, but just to let you guys know to be thinking about if the Sun Belt added 2 more schools, who would you want to add? And then Artie has some ones that he's thrown out. Again, we'll get to that after we wrap up.
Can I ask a clarifying question when the 2-school question? Is that just for baseball? Is that for all sports? And does it need to be a regionally makes sense ad?
I'm gonna say it's whoever you guys want to put, because it looks like Artie kind of went ahead and did that for him. But Ben doesn't put anything on it as far as specifics towards baseball or just overall. I would say overall because I want to add to football, basketball, baseball kind of thing. But
East Carolina would be my number 1 pick. East Carolina would bolster this conference in a lot of things.
Yeah, I agree. Not so much for football, but
the Pirates will turn it around. I was born and raised in Greenville. When they get it figured out, they've got fan support, they got money, they'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm just thinking baseball and basketball. Here's an old school name for you, but College of Charleston, baseball wise and basketball wise.
Pass. Yeah. They don't have football.
Yeah, that's true. I want somebody for all sports too. Yeah, it makes sense.
Well, you didn't clarify completely, but
Alabama.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll get back to that because that one's a conversation that could go on and interrupt the whole thing.
We don't like to do that around here.
No, we hate that. Georgia State, not horrible, unlike their ballpark, Artie says. CJ is saying Georgia State streams are glitchy. Yeah, Artie is kind of alluding to the same thing, that the cameraman is probably bouncing on crates out there at Georgia State's field. And Artie is saying, yeah, he at least for his reasoning, he put all sports for what we're looking at there. So we'll go for all sports when we get back to that. James Madison, is CJ still with us? We'll talk about that App State series coming up this weekend. They just got beat by a team we just talked about. 2-1 Georgia State. Yeah. Now I don't know what Seth. Technically, you are covering JMU as far as a feature thing. Do you want to start us off whether you think JMU Dukes are a pretender or contender so far this season?
If we're clarifying, let's say tops. I know Marv's saying top 4 for regional. Let's say the top 6 would be our
contender
kind of measuring point for contender. I don't. Okay. I don't see it. No. I know they have a decent RPI, but I think they're a little bit average or below average. Looking at these stats right now, 3 and 6,
16 and 12 on the season.
6 and 12 overall. Yeah,
they won a conference series.
Have not won a conference series. They won one against Coastal, one against Georgia State. and one other one. I forgot who they
one last weekend against Georgia State.
And they won one against Georgia State, one against Coastal. I forgot who the other one was.
Texas State.
Texas State. Okay.
Yep.
They're 4-5 in conference as well, 15-14. No, not very impressed. Not very impressed with JMU. But like we've talked about, if they took 2 or 3 from App or even swept App, I think this is a whole nother conversation next week. But right now, I would be shocked if App did not take at least 2 or 3 from JMU. So no, I'm gonna say pretender on this.
Yeah, I think the other thing you got to look at, and then Marv, we'll get your thoughts too, is a lot of the wins came early in the season, and you're looking at some of the teams they played. Obviously, the Arkansas win was huge, but they did have 4 tries against Arkansas, which a lot of teams only get 3 games. They got 4, and then they obviously took one of those. Then they played Fairfield in a series. I don't know much about Fairfield baseball, but I know I don't hear their name for baseball, so I'm not really impressed with the series victory over them or Cornell. So the 6 of their wins right there against 2 teams that I don't think anything of when I think of baseball. And so we'll have to see. Like you guys said, I mean, they're just kind of holding on in a lot of these series so far. Then they've still got, we just talked about App State's series this week. Honestly, it wouldn't shock me if either team won 2-1. I just, like we've said, it's hard to sweep. I don't think either of these 2 teams are sweeping. Right. We'd all love to see App State win. As CJ would like to see JMU win in a sweep, but I don't think that's happening for either side, if I'm being honest, just as what we've seen has happened so far this year. Then they go on the road to ODU, in-state matchup there. They play at home versus Georgia Southern, at South Alabama, Arkansas State, Marshall, and then Troy. So they really don't have the toughest end of the season. So they really could get hot and start winning more series than they're losing, but I don't know if that'll be enough if they don't beat the good teams in those matchups as well. But the lesser teams, they could and should either win 2-1 or end up with a few sweeps on their side. So I think
there's baseball left.
Yeah, I think they're right, just like Georgia State to me. I think they're right there in that mid 6, 7, 8 team in the conference. To be honest with you,
I've got them 8th. I cannot call you a contender until you win a conference series. So I'm going to go pretender at the moment.
Agreed.
Yep. I think that's fair. I think that's very fair. I don't know how anybody could kind of go against that. No, the Dukes are just okay. They have some Sunbelt growing pains in baseball, at least. Yeah. And then Artie's agreeing with most of us here, saying App State will take this season series here this weekend 2-1. And then another cakewalk schedule. Yeah, for JMU, there's really no excuse. If they want to become a contender, it's pretty easy to do. You've got the schedule to make it happen.
I think they move first pitch up tomorrow too to 3:00.
Yeah, the impending weather, I guess, that they're thinking about.
Yeah, and I told my boss this week that I have a podcast, so I hope he's not listening. But I'm going to cut out of work early tomorrow and watch the ball game.
Nice, very nice. Well, I'm still on vacation. I'm not going back tomorrow, so I'll be checking in on that one. I'll be watching a lot more baseball this weekend. That is for sure.
And just to throw this out there, maybe if they would have let somebody come on our podcast, then maybe they would have won a conference series by now. So
yeah, that's true.
Look what happened to App, all of a sudden, and now JMU is just. We tried, fellas. We tried.
Yeah.
They did not get the syndicate bump.
Yeah.
No syndicate bump if you don't get on the syndicate. CJ saying the first pitch is at 4, not 3:00. But if you were looking at
that's right, because I look at the Sun Belt Conference and it's from
Central.
From Central. 4:00. All right, well, look, I don't feel so bad about cutting out of work a little early now.
Yeah, it's only an hour now.
4:00 on a Friday.
Yep. So, yeah, I do that all the time too, man. I'm like, mental math, I got to go back an hour on there or add an hour, depending on which way you're looking at it for. All right, the hottest team in college baseball, as far as I'm concerned. I'm sure that there's other people that'll say other ones, but it's hard to go against a team that has strung 12 straight victories together and sweeping the Bobcats of Texas State, Artie's favorite team.
Have they swept 3 series in a row?
That's a good question.
12 straight wins, you got to sweep 3 series in your midweeks.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. Absolutely. Contender.
So they swept They went 2-1 versus Arkansas State. They swept ODU. They've only swept 2 in a row.
Okay, so they're 8-1 in conference.
Yeah.
All right.
Wow. And we're sitting here talking about how rare a sweep is, and they've got 2 in a row, fellas.
And the only team that took one from them is Arkansas State,
which is crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah, CJ works for you guys. CJ works for JMU. So CJ, go ahead and put in a good word for your guys at the syndicate and tell them that they need to allow some of their players on the podcast.
Yeah, who was the guy that rejected us?
It was the SDI or the sports
SID.
SID.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, CJ, pull some strings, man.
Yeah. Get us in there.
Until after the app series, I can get the bump after that.
Yeah, there you go. Already saying Lafayette sucks so bad.
They're pretty good. That's already.
This one's not really one we got to spend a lot of time on. I think this is 100% a contender.
They are a contender. So kind of recap the series real quick. Game 1 was 4-1. It was just a pitcher's duel from what I could see. Game 2, UL wins 16-5. They got up 7-0. They had 16 hits and 3 homers in the game. And then the last game was a 7-6 battle. UL put up 5 in the top of the 8th. So it was a really – Texas State got 2 back in the bottom of the 9th, but obviously fell a run short. But this one was in San Marcos. So for them to go to San Marcos and get a sweep, best team in the conference, contender.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I've got zero issue with that. I mean, anybody who doesn't think that they're contenders out their mind. Let's just take a look at the rest of their schedules. We've kind of done that with everybody else. So obviously, this week they've got the matchup with in-state foe ULM. They play Marshall. Marshall's at home, at Coastal Carolina, home versus Southern Miss, at Troy, at Georgia Southern, and then they host South Alabama. So, probably favorable for the Cajuns, but for anybody else, I don't think that's an easy schedule to end the season, really.
I think so. You said this week they have ULM and then they have Marshall.
Yes.
5 wins, 5 conference wins probably coming out of that. Sweep 1, 2 out of 3. Then Coastal, Troy, Coastal, Southern Miss, Troy.
Coastal, Southern Miss, Troy. Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's the meat of their schedule right there. But I think the next 2 weeks they're going to kind of cushion their lead in the conference.
I agree. And then towards the end, you'll find out who they really are. But they're coasting right now. Yeah,
and I honestly don't see a loss coming in between ULM and Marshall at all because they've got Prairie View, A&M in a midweek. Oh, actually, they have La Tech. I missed that one when I first looked. They have La Tech. Actually, a couple of their midweeks are a little tougher, so the La Tech game is going to be hard. And then Southeast Louisiana, boys, the Lions, they're a pretty good baseball team this year. They got 2 straight against them in back-to-back nights on the 16th and 17th of April. So those midweeks are going to be harder than their weekend series, I think, for the next 2 at least. So we'll see, tough competition, maybe having those lighter weekend series versus conference foes, it will play into their favor, and they can go a little bit. Maybe they can save some of their better players and better starters pitching wise for some of their midweek games because that may help their RPI more than these next 2 in-conference series do. Let's get back to some comments right here. Rivertown Sports Media saying Coastal will win the conference. That's quite the statement after what we've just looked at and seen so far this year. But they're saying starting to figure out the pitching. Maybe.
Would it surprise me if Coastal got it together and won the conference? No. Do I see it happening? No.
Yeah. I guess you're right. It wouldn't surprise me, but
it would be if we looked at it at the beginning of the season. If we were sitting here on the first podcast and we would have asked everyone the question, who do you think wins the conference? I think all 3 of us probably would have said Coastal.
Absolutely.
So, wouldn't surprise me, but just seeing the way that they're playing right now, maybe their pitching is figuring it out. But I mean, shit, they gave up 11 runs to ULM. So
yeah. I can't remember what I said, if I said anything, but I wanted to say I was on the Cajun strain before.
Of course you were.
before a lot of people. And well, hey, here's why. I watched so closely last year, and I did have them doing well in the conference tournament, and then they came out on top and they go on the run in, postseason a little bit there. Didn't get quite as far as Southern Miss, but we knew Southern Miss was going to be probably not quite as good as they were last year with losing their legendary head coach and a couple players to graduation. So, yeah, I mean, I knew the Cajuns would really have it together. They've got a rich tradition and history there as far as baseball is concerned down there in Lafayette. So it doesn't surprise me that they're here at the top. But, yeah, I mean, you're right, Marv. If you're talking who's the favorite going into the season, you're going to have Coastal up there almost every single time.
Well, I'm just thinking about this. Two comments real quick. Number one, the number one place in the Sun Belt that I want to go watch a baseball game is right there.
Where?
Louisiana.
Oh, okay. For Myrtle Beach.
I don't know when App's going to play there again, but man, that would be a fun road trip, and I'm hoping that Don, don't you have some connections with the Raging Cajun podcast?
Yep, Raging Review guys. Yeah.
Maybe they'd treat us nice when we were down there. So just looking at the standings, they're 8-1 in conference. They're a game up on Georgia State, 2 up on Southern Miss. If they win 5 out of their next 6 against, we'll call it weaker competition, I don't think Georgia State's going to win 5 out of their next 6. Southern Miss could, maybe coast up. Maybe they could have a 3-game lead, coming out of this in the conference. So, as hard as it is to sweep, can someone catch them? Yes, but is it feasible?
Right. I think you're right. This is right here, right now, where they outpace everybody because of who they have the next 2 weeks. I think this is where they jump out on top, and then it's, can you maintain? Can anybody kind of catch up to them? And that will be the part.
They sweep both of these next 2 weekends, and everyone's playing catch up.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree. Artie says you didn't need to recap that series. He wanted you to move along. Nothing to see here.
Hey, I just gently touched on it, Artie.
Yeah, there you go. We tried to take it easy on you. Lukey and Johnson have found their way. Coastal about to go on another run. Well, I mean, you're obviously a Coastal fan. We hope the best for you. We'll just take solace in the fact that App State took their first ever series from the Chanticleers as they came up the mountain just a week or two ago.
That kid Boyle that they have, he's the real deal offensively. That kid can hit the baseball.
Yeah. Artie's saying he watched a little bit of the Southeast Lions game, and they are good. Yeah, that's a sneaky team that I've just been made aware of really after this past midweek and with how good that they are. So, yeah, that not an easy midweek coming up for the Cajuns in that regard. Speaking of our other Louisiana team, UL Monroe, coming off of a 2-1 series loss to the team that we were just talking about just a second ago with Coastal Carolina. Boys, anybody thinking they're actually a contender here at this point? Because I don't have them as a contender here on my list.
No, I don't think this is the one we should waste much time with. I don't see this. Yeah, there's a few here. I mean, Marshall we can talk about for a little bit, but not this one. I feel like this one.
Consider that ULM goes to Louisiana this weekend. They're already 3-6 in conference. I'm going to put them with Arkansas State. They're not a contender, but they're exactly where I think people thought they would be.
Right.
Yeah. They had, so I have a note here that they had a 5-game win streak. But that 5-game win streak included a 3-game series sweep of Alabama A&M. You're not getting a lot of credit from me for beating Alabama A&M. Other than that, they really can't put much together as far as streaks are concerned. They've won 2 games. Oh, no, they've won 3 games one other time together, again, against kind of subpar competition. And then they're kind of doing a little bit of that James Madison thing where they're just barely holding on to not getting swept on some of these series as well. So, yeah, they've got Louisiana this week, as we've talked about. They've got Texas State, Southern Miss, ODU, Georgia Southern, South Alabama, Arkansas State.
Their next 3 series are killer.
Yeah. They are dead in the water already, and it's only going to get worse if you ask me. So, yeah, I don't see anything coming up roses for ULM, and I think since we all agree, we won't spend as much time. Unfortunately, a lot of Warhawk fans made some noise when I had the standings incorrect, but They don't jump on and make many comments here. So, hey, see you later. All right, time for Marshall. Time for Marshall coverage here. We just had them lose 2-1 to App, but they did take that first game. Were you either one of you guys concerned when that one happened? Be honest.
I think we're a little shocked, but not overly concerned. The one Marv went to on Sunday or Saturday, I think that kind of cleared a little bit up. But I don't think Marshall's a terrible baseball team by any means. But like Marv said, they may be a little bit better than what we thought they were, but they're right where we thought they would be.
Yeah, I think they're picked to be towards the bottom of the conference. I know that a couple of people said, "Hey, they're going to be sneaky." They can be sneaky. They've got some good pitching. Their bats were pretty good the first 2 games against App, and then that last game, it was just, buddy, you read body language, and they could not wait to get out of Boone.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So when they won that first one, I was concerned because I thought, what we just heard of when we had Chad on the show, and he talked about how impressed he was by their pitching and he was one of the ones who literally told us that they would be a sneaky team.
Right.
So I was concerned after they took that first one, if they won another low scoring game on Saturday, or actually, I guess that was on Friday, right? Because we had Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So if they had won another low scoring game on Friday, that they take the series and App could hammer them in that Saturday final game, and you don't take much solace in the fact you still lost the series. So I was concerned when I saw that first game score, unfortunately, but worked out for us on our side. They have not strung more than 2 wins together all season long. So to me, right there, that's your pretender status, because you cannot succeed in college baseball, any baseball really, if you can't put some winning streaks together. Like you said, they've got some pitchers, they've got some players that they are going to need to continue to kind of up their game. Like I said, this year with the new home facility, everybody excited about the baseball program for the first time in a while. That's great, but this is still a building block year. They weren't ever going to be, a regional team or a super regional team or anything crazy. You were probably hoping at best that they end up near the middle of the pack. Well, I think at this point that's going to be probably not going to be seen this year either. Let's see. They are
the only team in the conference with a losing record.
Really?
Only team in the conference. 9-18 on the year. We got a bunch of teams right around 500. I mean, Arkansas State's 16-15, ULM's 15-14, South Alabama's 16-13, Texas State's 15-14, but I think they're way better than their record. Old Dominion's 15-13. I think they're better. Georgia Southern's 15-14. Georgia State 15-13. So you got a lot of kind of middle of the pack teams there, but they are the only team with a losing record.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I don't think we got 3 teams that already have 20 wins.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think that's one thing I'm going to look up for next week is like comparing the Sun Belt directly to a lot of these other conferences as far as like how many 21 teams. I did that last year. It was really interesting to see where it kind of put the Sun Belt at that point. And I think this is right around the middle point of the season where it would make sense to do it again. So maybe I'll put those stats together for next week. This weekend, they've got Texas State.
Yeah.
Don't think that's going to be easy, although they do have that one at home. Then they go on the road to Louisiana, host ODU, at Georgia Southern, home versus Georgia State, on the road versus JMU, and they host Coastal at the end of the season.
Their next 2 weekends and their last weekend are absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah. And then going on the road to Statesboro when Georgia Southern's probably going to need that series big time, and they're going to be mouth watering seeing Marshall coming in there. So, yeah. And if Georgia State stays hot, then that's not going to be easy either. So, yeah, I don't see this season improving greatly for the Herd at that point. Unfortunately,
conference RPI for baseball. I'm trying to look it up. All I can find is individual RPI, but did a conference like they do for football?
I don't know if they do a conference RPI, but I did see that there is some stat. I'd have to scroll through Twitter, which I'm not going to do right this second. But yeah, there was somebody who said they're like the 4th rated baseball conference in the country right now.
What is it? SEC, ACC, Pac-12?
Probably. obviously the first two you named for sure, but I would assume Pac-12. There's no way the Big Ten's all the way up. In fact, let me see if there's a single Big Ten team ranked. Off the top of my head, I don't think of one.
So talking to RPI, and this is why I don't always trust RPI. So Sunbelt teams, Coastal at 23rd. I think that's appropriate. Next is James Madison at 31. Don't believe that at all. No offense to the James Madison guy listening. Louisiana's at 48. I obviously think they're better than that. Georgia Southern at 49. Georgia State at 53. Southern Miss at 57. Old Dominion at 61. App State at 65. South Alabama at 66.
Wow.
So if you think about that, I mean, they've got 305 teams on here. We've got like 8 in the top 70.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So I did look it up while you were rolling through that, Marv. Nebraska, the only ranked baseball team in the Big Ten at number 24, so barely holding on to a ranking. Meanwhile, you've got Coastal in there currently. And again, this is the D1 baseball rankings on NCAA.com, so that's the one.
Louisiana getting votes in that? Are they in like the others receiving votes category?
So unfortunately, at least on this site specifically, it only shows who dropped out. It doesn't show you how close anybody is, but it sounds like from what I could ascertain from some Twitter interactions that they are right there, right on the cusp. They'd be 26, 27, 28 in just about every single poll.
Okay.
So if they're not in there after this weekend, then I think you got a problem. Especially if Coastal loses anything, they should jump them for sure. You know how they treat mid-majors as what we don't think they are, but that's how they're going to treat the Sun Belt. So if you treat a mid-major saying, you can only have one from a conference, that's really what they try and do in football specifically, right? So if you're going to switch one out, that's the team it's going to be. It's Coastal for Louisiana in that regard. And then hopefully Coastal can keep going. And, we got 2 teams still ranked up there until we can get more than that. But that won't be easy. And surprise here, guys. Artie Cat is saying Marshall's going to win this series 2-1 against Texas State. He's not high up on his Bobcats right now.
Yeah, if that happened, I don't see it. I don't see it.
I don't either.
Yeah, that would be a little rough there, but maybe not shocking. I don't know. We'll have to see. All right, so we've got ODU who just took down South Alabama 2-1. This is a team where the bats are rolling, their offense is going well, they're going to win games. If they're silent, I mean, it's pretty obvious, I guess. It's really stating the very basics of baseball, but they can get really hot with the bat. They hit 100 home runs last year. We always talk about that. They're just, it seems like home runs or bust, right? I mean, that's
right.
They call them the Bud Bombers because I think they play at the stadium's nicknamed the Bud. And so about ODU contender, pretender, I guess I'll start since it's my team that I really covered. I've got them right there with James Madison and Georgia State as far as kind of like this middle coaster effect of like you're middle of the pack. I don't see you being a contender, and I don't see you being, one of the worst teams in the conference by any means. But I don't see enough consistency to put them in the contender status.
I'll agree with that. And they got Coastal coming up this weekend. I think Coastal takes that. Listen, I think they've got a good pitching staff, but their bats haven't been that hot. So this series, they take 2 or 3 from South Alabama, which I think that series, I think we'd all agree you could have tossed, flipped a coin, and whatever it landed on, I would have said they'll win 2-1. First game to win 8-2. South Alabama only gets 5 hits. ODU pitcher struck out 11, so they do have a good pitching staff. Second game was 8-3 ODU. ODU puts up 6 runs in the 6th and 7th inning to kind of pull away. And then rubber game, hard to win. South Alabama takes that one 5-3. South Alabama scores 4 over the last 3 innings. Pretty even game. Both teams actually pitched pretty well. But I'm with you, Dominic. I don't see that I don't see them contending for a conference championship or a regional spot. They're a middle of the pack team to me.
Yeah. I know right before they got into the Sun Belt, I think they had one of their better baseball seasons in recent history. And then they got into the Sun Belt and they had a good overall record last year, but their conference record was like 500. I think they had like 41 wins, but they were like 16-16 in conference or whatever that works out to. It was just really strange. Like they really excelled outside of the conference, but they struggled to win inside the conference, which again points me to the fact you're talking about a conference that should not be considered a mid-major baseball conference because it's damn hard to win. But teams that aren't even all that great inside the conference are crushing people outside of it. So, obviously some of that's just scheduling basics, but yeah, it's a kind of a weird team. Again, they can be really, really hot and look really, really good. And then there's other times where they just don't really have many notes. It's just no consistency from what you see.
That's what we're looking for is consistency. And we're not seeing much of anything other than about 5 or 6 teams right now.
Yeah. I will say, as we've talked about a little bit, like with already saying cupcake schedules for something, listen to the schedule. Obviously, this weekend at Coastal Carolina, that part's not going to be easy. And they literally have East Carolina on Wednesday.
Hey, they beat East Carolina earlier this year, did they not?
I think they did.
They did.
Yes, they beat them 6-5.
Y'all see what ECU did to State the other night?
No.
12-4.
Wow.
Yeah. ECU. Yeah. We'll bring full circle when we talk about the 2 teams you would like to add with East Carolina.
Yeah, and State's ranked number 19 this week.
What's ECU, like 13, 14, somewhere in there?
12,
yeah.
Jeez.
They were previously 15th, and State was previously number 22. So they both moved up. So, I mean, hey, good for them.
How much
I guess –
you know how much, I know this is a Sun Belt podcast. You know how much good college baseball we have right here in the state of North Carolina? It's absolutely
very, very good.
Actually, if you include the Carolinas in general, North Carolina and South Carolina, you could put a whole conference together of baseball greatness just right there. Yeah. So at Coastal Carolina, right? But listen to the remaining schedule here. This is just for conference play. James Madison at home, Marshall on the road, ULM at home, Texas State on the road, App State at home, Georgia State on the road. Not murderer's row. You know, if you can win the majority of those series, you're ending up maybe just outside of a top 4 or 5 spot for possible seeding for conference tournament time. I think just like baseball, I believe everybody. I'd have to look back. Actually, I don't think everybody does make the tournament.
I'm looking that up as you
talk.
talk.
I got it right here. I have it right here. Yeah, so there's playing games. Not everybody makes the tournament, unless they're going to change it this year. But I haven't seen anything that tells me that. 2, 4, 6.
I think it's the top 10.
It's a lot of them though, because there was 2 play-in games really. JMU beat ODU 2-1 in a game to get into the tournament last year. Georgia State beat Georgia Southern 8-5 to get into the tournament, and from there you had 8 teams. So you had 10 teams.
Top 10 teams make it. That's it. So I've already got it pulled up for this year. So you'll have 7 versus 10, 8 versus 9, 3 versus 6, and then the number 2 seed gets the highest round 1 winner. Yeah, so top 10 teams make it. Bottom 4 don't.
Makes sense. I'm all for just everybody making it, to be honest, just like basketball anymore. And why not?
Yeah.
Baseball is one of those sports even more so than basketball to me that like a hot team could just go on a tear, right?
Hey, at least it's double elimination.
Yeah, I do like that. That's why I think you're going to have teams that are consistently better do well in a tournament style like that, because if they can afford to have one mess up and then get back on the right track. So or one star pitcher that they can't have go 2 days in a row, right? So. Yeah.
But I'm just looking at this, man. It pays to be 1, 2, or 3 seed, because if you're 4,
absolutely.
If you're 4, you got to play the number 5 seed right there. I mean, that's pretty tough.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Ben wants to cover A-State for us. Maybe we'll have a conversation with them for that. I know CJ has sent me some pictures from some of the JMU stuff. So definitely, I'll point that out, and I'll share this later on socials too. But if you guys want clips on the show, we cannot afford to pay for copyright. So we technically can't show clips. But if you guys send fan clips in, we can start showing some of those things when we talk about some of the games. If you guys little cell phone videos you want to send to one of the social accounts on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, you can do that. I'll try and put them into the show, and then we'll have a little bit more to watch, especially if something controversial happens. You know, you grab it on camera. Even in still photos, we can have those up as we talk about it. So, yeah. So just to throw that out there is something we could do as a possibility. Already saying cake with a cherry on top. Artie, you might have to tell me what you're meaning by that, because
I think he's saying their remaining schedule is a piece of cake.
Oh yes, yeah, I got it now. Yep. Okay.
I mean, Coastal, App, Texas State. Those are the three series that if they want to make a run, you're going to have to win those series.
Yeah. Very, very true. All right. So what do we got now? South Alabama. We just kind of talked about them recently here because they just matched up with the team we just talked about in ODU. They only took one of those in that series. What are we thinking for them? Contender or pretender? Seth, do you want to start us off with that one?
I'm kind of a little burnt right here. South Alabama.
Well, okay, while you do that, this is one of those teams that ended last year terribly. They went on a massive losing streak last year to end the season, but they were picked to jump up 4 or 5 spots in the coaches poll before this season ever even started. So there was something that people were seeing or noticing or hearing that led them to believe South Alabama was going to become one of the better teams in the conference all of a sudden after being one of the worst last year. And
they haven't won a conference series.
3-6 in conference.
They haven't won it.
That's a good stat there. Not a single conference series. So, yeah.
You got JMU, South Alabama, ULM, Arkansas State, and Marshall have not won a series yet. So, to go back to my previous statement, until you win a series, you are not a contender. But I'm surprised that they're not higher than they are. I kind of maybe bought some of the hype coming in, thought they were going to be a little bit better. And I don't know. What's the remaining schedule look like? Maybe they put it together. Maybe they're just trying to figure things out now. But
yeah, I'll get to that. To start off, one of the reasons that we all thought we agreed with the coaches to start off the season 6-0 to start the season. Haven't won more than 2 games in a row after that.
Yeah.
So there you go. Yeah. There's your pretender status for me.
Pretender. They got Southern Miss this weekend.
Yeah, Southern Miss this weekend. Arkansas State, Texas State, James Madison, App State, ULM at Louisiana to end the season. That's not easy.
No, pretender.
It's not the hardest one we've heard, but yeah.
It isn't. No, it's not the most difficult. You're right. But you've got Southern Miss and Louisiana on there, as well as at Texas State if they can get it back together. And then you're going to Boone as well.
Yeah.
So, and that's a travel. From Mobile to Boone, you're talking about a good travel. That's not a bus ride. I mean, maybe they do a bus ride. I doubt it. I would think they're flying for that one.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's tough sledding. Pretender.
No, not much to talk about on that one, I don't think.
Already saying pretender, but getting better. Yeah, I mean, I can see them, they put some wins together. Let's just talk about just this midweek thing. They had just gotten through winning the last game at ODU, lost the series overall, but then you got a game against New Orleans, still very close to home. Think you could win that one. You get stomped 13-3.
New Orleans is a good team. We talked about that. They're good, but it's a pretty good thrashing.
Yeah, definitely a pretty good team. Bro.
The box score. I mean, it could have been one where they ran away with it late. It's a competitive game, but I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. All right, I think this one's pretty easy, but we've got Southern Miss up next. Contender, right? I mean, everyone's on the train that they're a contender, right? I mean, no one's going to surprise
number 2.
Are they?
That's your number 2 slot right there.
Yeah, they are. Now, they're the second team, best team in the conference. So just quick recap. 2-1 series win over Troy. First game, 10-run rule them in 7, 14-4. USN jumped on them. It was or Southern Miss jumped on them. It was 9-1 after 3. They put together 20 hits. And how about this? Won 14-4, have 20 hits, no home runs. So they just they just moved the ball around the ballpark. Mazza, their Friday starter, threw a gem. Troy wins the second game 9-8. A lot of action late in that game. It really got competitive in the last 3 innings. And then good close game to end the series, 5-3. Southern Miss just too good at pitching. And I think that's kind of what we talked about. I think they have the best pitching staff, in my opinion, in the conference. And if their bats can get hot when their pitchers are throwing well, it's a tough team to beat.
Yeah. Very tough.
Yeah, they've only strung 4 wins together at this point, but they've done the 2 wins to 1 loss type of thing a lot more often. So they still have a consistency issue as well. But yeah, definitely still one of those teams that you're never counting Southern Miss out, not in this conference.
Didn't they shockingly lose a series the weekend before this?
They did. Was it Texas?
Yeah, Georgia Southern. Yeah, Georgia Southern. They lost to Georgia Southern. Mm-hmm.
So now Georgia Southern's now coming off of 2 consecutive series wins.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Going to Georgia State, man. That's I have to think that's going to be on our picks this week.
Yeah, let's do it.
We actually have to get on those because I got to get those out just so that we don't miss one like we did last week. Oh man, yeah. So yeah, and to note that they took a series victory from La Tech, so not a conference foe, but that was a weekend series at one point that they had early on. Let's see what the rest of their schedule looks like, even though we've got them as a contender, obviously, already. At South Alabama this weekend, at Georgia State after that, ULM, at Louisiana, Coastal Carolina in Hattiesburg, at Arkansas State, and then Texas State at home to end the series or end the year. So it's a little bit tough ending there.
In Coastal, Louisiana, and Texas State, that's yeah, I don't envy those last couple series.
This is almost this, well, even more so a situation of get your wins in now.
Yes.
Just like Louisiana to stay on top and Louisiana being chased right there by Southern Miss because that back end of your conference slate ain't going to be easy. You cannot be having to need to win those games at the end of the year. And you could be looking at a regional shoe-in right here with Louisiana and Southern Miss.
That's going to be some fun baseball to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. All right, we got a couple teams left here. Texas State, Artie, probably still with us, but let's see.
We won't talk about the series. We all know what happened.
Yeah, we did talk about the series already. So I've got another roller coaster right now currently, but I have them trending up because since we've already talked about the series, we'll jump right into this one. So they've strung a couple 4 and 5 wins together. I think just 4. I think 4 was their longest win streak of the season. But listen to this finish for conference play.
Yeah, Marshall.
At Marshall, at ULM, South Alabama, at Arkansas State, ODU, Troy, at Southern Miss. So you're looking at a tough last 2 series, right? Everything else should be extremely winnable.
Artie, get your wins when you can, bud.
It's not terrible.
No, it's not terrible at all. I mean, if you're looking at this after the early part of the season, you're thinking we're going to cakewalk through most of this schedule until the very, very end when you got Troy and Southern Miss, of which Troy you host, and you're going on the road to Southern Miss. So, yeah, I mean, I think you could.
Their next weekends are Marshall, ULM, Arkansas State.
Marshall, ULM, and South Alabama, then Arkansas State.
I mean, wow. You got 4 series right there. I mean, you can right the ship in a hurry.
Makes them round up real fast.
Yeah, knowing that, I'm going to throw them into – I mean, obviously they beat App in a series. They got swept by the hottest team. I'm going to forgive that. I think that they can get right back on track this weekend.
Contender.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
On their schedule, at least.
Right. If you look at where they're at currently in the standings, you say like middle of the pack team, but when you look at what they could do and what they're very capable of, I've got them as a contender as well right now. Let's see what Artie has to say since it's his team. He's watched them probably more closely than anybody that we know. I thought this team was a contender, but they're a pretender. The great pretenders. Total embarrassment versus Louisiana and Texas A&M. Season over. Anyone can take a series or even sweep Bobcats. No problem, man.
Wow.
Ripped them.
Wow.
Well, we'll see. But we are trying to pump you and your boys up over there, Artie, because we've got you guys as a contender still. Until proven otherwise, we've got you on the contender status. Again, favorable schedule. And I know you've talked about that a few times. So hopefully that remains that way for you guys and you can get back into the winning ways. Okay, last team, and then we'll talk about teams we want to add to this conference. Troy goes down to Southern Miss 2-1. Again, already talked about that series. But where do we find Troy? They've been that kind of team that's it's not one that we've been talking about as an easy win, and it's not one that we're thinking that we're probably going to sweep anybody in either. I think this is kind of a middle of the pack team for me. But what do you guys think? Contender, pretender for the rest of the season in the Sun Belt here for Troy?
They got 20 wins already.
Definitely a contender, in my opinion.
Yeah. Like I said, and I'm going to backtrack on what I said
Contending
earlier.
for the 6th spot, if that's what we're referring to as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think, honestly, once again, just my personal opinion, Louisiana, Southern Miss, Coastal, and then you've got App, Texas State, and Troy fighting for that next group of 3.
Right. Yeah.
So
I'd say pretender, or excuse me, a contender. I wouldn't kick them out just yet.
No, contender. They got Arkansas State this weekend at Troy.
There's 2 or 3 right there.
Who do they have after that, Dom?
So, all right, well, first of all, I'm going to give Artie credit, contender all day. I'm going to go the opposite of all of you guys. I'm going to say they're a pretender. Here's why. They started off the season with 2, 4, 6, 8 or 9 wins to 1 loss, okay? Since then, they've strung 2 wins together. That's it. And then they keep getting a loss in there. Plus the fact that here's their ending schedule. Arkansas State this weekend, like you said, at App State. Georgia State at Coastal Carolina. Louisiana at Texas State, James Madison. Not easy. Not easy. To me, this team is similar to ODU in like they can get hot, they can beat people they shouldn't, and they should hammer some teams at some points too, because they're more than capable of that. But I just don't see the consistency recently. All the consistency with the winning aspect was at the beginning of the season. And they haven't replicated that since.
Right.
And with what we just talked about for the remaining schedule, I don't know if I see enough to put them in the contender status. I mean,
is that Troy App series is at Boone, right?
Yes, in Boone, correct.
We were talking about that this morning, Marv. That's the one you were saying would determine a lot about this.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be – so let's assume that Troy rights the ship this weekend against Arkansas State and App takes 2 or 3 from James Madison. That series in Boone the next weekend's a pretty big series for both of those teams.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. All right. Well, that'll round out
contender.
Yeah. See, I knew I could get you guys over on my side. No, it wasn't clear to me until I looked at the remaining schedule, and that's when I said I don't see it. So yeah. I don't see enough of it.
Coastal and Louisiana, where are those, home or away?
Coastal is in Conway, and Louisiana is in Troy.
Okay.
So you do have that. All right. So now the topic that everybody will want to kind of talk about, which is which teams are we adding? Marv, you already went with something, but you said you had something you were holding on to, I think, on this.
No. I mean, so for the East Carolina makes a ton of sense. I think the American Conference is completely overrated. I think they're a like-minded public school here in North Carolina. Traditionally been a good football team. Baseball's fantastic. Basketball's okay. But if you just look at the other teams in the East, it makes a lot of sense geographically. I've been sitting here for a while trying to figure out, if you take one in the East, you got to take one in the West. I don't know. I don't know who you would want to take in the West.
I've been through this exercise a number of times, and specifically for football, but I related it to every sport along the way. So I took East Carolina like you did, just like you did. Geographically, they just fit in immediately. You've got almost equal distance, and not even equal distance, actually. ODU and ECU are extremely close.
Yeah.
In baseball and basketball, that just makes sense as a nice, easy rivalry.
They've had a rivalry with Marshall in the past. It fits in really well. You've got
the battle of the purple teams, if you include James Madison. You've got the natural rivalry with App State across the state. Yeah, exactly. I think that those two teams are kind of similar in some regards. Like neither one's really at the beach, but they're kind of beachy schools. That whole kind of thing. I think they'd fit in great. Their fan base is awesome because they are huge in numbers. They have a great following. They will go anywhere to watch a game. They're not powerful at all in basketball. They don't really bring anything in basketball. They're not going to make the Sun Belt any more respectable if they come in basketball, but they do that in baseball 100%. In football, they have the capability to do that, right? We've seen how good they have been with how many guys they've put into the NFL. So
have you ever been to a tailgate at ECU?
I have, yeah. Mm-hmm. I went when they played App, in 09 or 12? I can't remember which year I went. First one, whatever the first one was, they almost won when Armani was on the bench.
Yes, that was 09, and then in 12 we played them when what's the quarterback's name, came in late. He ended up going and playing for the Saints for a long time.
Well, no, that was 09. That was Cadet.
That was 09. You're right. I
think Jamal Jackson was the quarterback in 12, right?
You are right. Yeah, Cadet.
You are right.
Cadet missed Hillary over the middle on a 4th and 10 when he was wide open. But at Rowdy Ficklin Stadium, is the folks in Greenville, they know how to tailgate. You will have a very, very, very good time.
Yeah. No, I definitely did not have a bad time. That was awesome. So let's get some comments in here before I get to my West team.
Who's your West school?
Memphis.
Okay, we'll get to that. So we're bringing in ECU, being good in football, or historically good in football. I'm bringing another aspect to the football powerhouse that the Sun Belt has become. Obviously, baseball, they bring it up. We talked about basketball not bringing anything. I want to bring a team that we talk about as the favorite every year, someone who's going to bring some respectability to the Sun Belt Conference is basketball, and that team, and a state that we actually don't include right now too, is Memphis. Yeah. Okay.
Wow. I was just shooting from the hip. Nice job, Dom.
Both of those teams, in my opinion, that is an absolute home run. I mean, we hit a home run when we got ODU, Marshall, and Southern Miss to come join. That's another one. Yeah.
Well, I think we got lucky in one regard, right? Whether it was ODU or JMU, we needed one of those two schools to be good. We needed one of those two schools to come in and be good right away, which James Madison has been.
Yep.
Not that everybody loves that. I'm just saying, as far as respectability for the conference, you couldn't have a bunch of these teams come in and all suck. You just couldn't have that.
Yeah.
Marshall, it didn't really matter if they were great or not coming in, because you knew they have the capability with their history too, just like ECU, to be good for a long time again right away.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with Southern Miss. They didn't have to be good immediately. They can rebuild. They can retool. They could get good again. ODU is the only one I still have a question mark about. I just think they're kind of a weird fit football-wise right now. There's nothing really wrong with them. They just have a young fan, like going to the game this year, football-wise, their fan base just doesn't have it kind of like figured out, right? Like
Norfolk's not a sports town.
Yeah, well, but they're basketball. I mean, they led the conference in basketball attendance when they had one of the worst teams in the conference. Like they love basketball.
Tidewater's a basketball area.
Yeah, and they've got a football talent, for football, high school wise, but they all leave, and so there's no like tradition and history right there at ODU, and you could easily see that when you went to the football game. Great people. I mean, I don't know if their tailgate was on par with anything I've seen at some of these like true tried and true football powerhouses, but they're really cool people to be around and very inviting as well. So definitely recommend going to a game there. Nice little, view from the top of I was at the very top of the stadium, but it's a nice, cool view to see out there and see everything like that. But yeah. So Memphis for me was my West team, going back to that point though. And I guess Seth, that was what you had there too. Did you have a team in the East you were thinking of?
No. For once I've been sitting here thinking, I can't think of anything. Memphis is what came to mind for the West though. I'll think about it for next week, but I don't have any solid teams.
So I was just thinking about this. The American Athletic wanted to call themselves, the P6. That was their kind of their tagline. They had UCF, who claims the national championship in football. With realignment, some things have happened with them. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is probably a couple years ago, those two schools moving to the Sun Belt would have been seen as a downgrade by their fan base, their administration. Do they still view it that way? Because I'm looking at who's in their conference right now. Temple, Tulsa, Charlotte, Florida Atlantic, UAB, North Texas, Navy, Rice, USF, Memphis, ECU, UTSA, Tulane, and SMU.
Yeah, but look where those markets are, though, Marv.
That would bolster our media market. You're correct. Their media markets are way bigger than ours. I'm sure their ESPN.
Yeah, it's the market, man.
But do you want to play North Texas? You give a shit about playing Charlotte? I don't know.
So I've got some interesting ones here. So I'm going to put Artie's comment back on from way earlier. University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, kind of an interesting move up. Definitely helps that Texas area. And FIU, since it's in Miami, because Miami visits are nice. So one in the West, one in the East, both previous members of the Sun Belt. So that's an interesting take because, maybe there is some history there that lends to the fact that they could get back in. Our Cajun, Yo Boy Carr says, "What's up, guys?" Joining us right here towards the end. And Ben is saying, if you had to add a team in the West, I'd say Southeast Missouri State, a.k.a. SEMO. Yeah, SEMO's kind of become a little bit bigger of a brand here lately, I think. They've been decent in basketball, and they've had some teams in baseball, I think, even too. Or he's saying Central Arkansas, even maybe. Yo Boy Carr's throwing out Tarleton State, average 18,000 per game for football, fourth, and all of FCS would give Texas State a Texas mate. Yeah. MTSU is being thrown out. MTSU used to be in the Sun Belt as well. For that reason, I don't see them coming back in. The Artie says the American is warmed over Conference USA. Yep. And Ben is saying also A-State plays Tulsa in football this year, and American is adding Army. And yeah, you mentioned SMU, Marv. They're going to be out, and they're going to the ACC. So yeah, I mean,
there's going to be more realignment more than likely in some of the Power Four conferences. Clemson and Florida State are, kind of flirting with leaving the ACC. I don't think realignment's over yet. Once again,
no, far from over. It might not be an ACC in 2 years.
Well, it's a great Atlantic Coast Conference when you have two West Coast teams. That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, and a Texas school in SMU.
Yeah, but no, honestly, if you could get those two schools, Memphis and ECU, that's a no-brainer, slam dunk.
Yeah, absolutely. Artie says Texas State does not want Tarleton in conference. I could see that, right? I don't want
Tarleton in the conference.
I don't either. They don't bring anything for me personally, and so for that reason, I'm out. As a shark would say on Shark Tank. I love University of Central Arkansas, great softball. Yeah, I didn't, those non-revenue sports like that aren't going to sway the meter. I think you're going to have to come in and be fully on board and committed to football being your number one sport. And then they don't care in this conference, obviously, if you're any good in basketball. Let's just be honest. It's just not a basketball conference right now. And we saw that with the lack of respect App State's great record got them, right? They weren't even a conversation to be that large.
James, you won a game in the tournament.
Yeah, they did. And now all coaches from this conference are gone, and good players from this conference are gone. So
don't go down that rabbit hole, Seth.
No, I'm cashed out tonight. I'm cashed out.
Yeah. Already saying University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, UTRGV. It doesn't matter how you say it. It's always a mouthful, so whatever. They'd be the third biggest Sunbelt market after Atlanta with over 1 million in population. That's kind of crazy. What about UTSA? I don't think UTSA is going to – they're raising the flag right now because of where they're at. So they're not going to leave a conference where they're the number one team to go anywhere else, if you ask me. Or he's asking about UTEP. I don't know. UTEP doesn't really excite me. El Paso is like way west.
Yeah.
In Texas too. Like it just adds to travel cost, and they don't – even with Texas State, to me, that's not regional enough. Texas is like a country, you know, like just because they're both in Texas doesn't mean that it's a regional matchup at all. I don't know. Maybe Artie can speak to that if anybody even cares about UTEP over there in San Marcos area. I don't think they do that. I think they'd rather see themselves play, you know, Texas and A&M and even some Louisiana schools over UTEP. I don't know. But Rivertown, thanks just for the great show tonight. Love hearing your opinions on the Sun Belt. Have a great weekend. You as well. And we'd love to see your prediction come true, I guess, and keep Coastal up in those rankings and keep, I mean, let's be honest. If Coastal's there, the Sun Belt automatically gets more respect, right? That's just how it works. If your top team is going to be your top team, then they got to keep up there and keep winning. But
hey, Don, speaking of predictions, you want to go ahead and do ours right now so we don't forget like last week?
Yeah, as soon as we jump off, we'll get those put together for sure. Already saying too far. We booked New Mexico State. It's 1,000 miles from San Marcos, literally. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's literally Texas is a country. Okay, guys, it's a whole country of culturally and everything else. Like it's just not just because they're both in Texas, it makes sense. So
remember when Idaho was in the conference?
What was that?
Remember when Idaho was in our conference?
Oh, yeah. God. Yes, I do. How did that make any sense?
It didn't.
Yeah. Okay. Yo boy Carr saying anybody but McNeese. Yeah, I don't know if anyone's throwing out McNeese, but I know that at one point in time that they were one of the better FCS teams, and I guess some people had thought that they could possibly move up. San Marcos is closer to Chicago than it is. Yeah. That's crazy to think about that. That is crazy to think about that. And Ben is saying Coastal is overrated. We tend to agree with you thus far, but still a lot of baseball to play. We just went through contenders, pretenders, and we'll see what kind of things come out of all of those predictions. Before we wrap it up here, guys, any last closing thoughts from you guys?
I think I'm good.
Yeah, no. Excited to next 3 weeks are going to be really crucial. Excited to see it. Yeah, absolutely. I know that there was a game on this Tuesday I was going to try and make it to. My son's birthday is Wednesday because I was planning on going to the ODU ECU game, and I was going to ask you if you would go with me, Marv. But, you know, you can't swing it when your kid's going from 5 to 6 years old. That's just going to be a big no-no with the wife.
Is that Tuesday night, next Tuesday?
That's Wednesday night. There's a game locally Tuesday that I was going to try and swing to, but I can't remember exactly who it was right now.
I could swing Wednesday, but not Tuesday. We got a baseball game Tuesday, but we'll have to. I would like to go in Greenville. I mean, heck, it's an hour from my house. I grew up in Greenville, so.
Yeah, I think it would be fun to go to, but unfortunately this year it ain't going to work out for me to get to ECU, so we'll see. But yeah, that about wraps it up for this week's episode right before this weekend's games get going, and we will see you guys all next week, probably at a date that we usually go on.
Yeah. That should work.
We'll see if we get back to the earlier week so we can wrap up the weekend games and give you a better talk about what we're going to expect in the midweek. So until next time, see you guys later.
Yeah.